Arise
You and
Play.
me, we're in this thing together.
So what exactly is your interest in my business?
I'm the only person that hadn't given up on you, John.
How you know my name? He wanted something from me, all right? He was pretending like he was my friend.
The guy who can do that, he's here. I say we go in there and kick his head inside out. The world hurts people, John.
I'm doing everything I can.
What if that's not enough?
I come in after the hurt. Let's rip his throat out.
Just let me handle it.
All I do is kill people who are already dead.
Please, just stop. It's not a game anymore.
You ain't saying nothing. Stop trying to figure me out. Got my own ideas.
Everything okay?
It's gonna kill my family. You get that?
We are in this together, John.
We're adding new titles every day to our awesome collection of blockbuster movies. Download the app and subscribe. This isn't just a streaming channel. This is a bold new world of entertainment. Arise Play. Beyond streaming.
A very warm welcome to This Week, 60 minutes of analytical review of the big stories, topical issues, and all the controversies around the world. I'm Sumner Sambo. Let's go to the headlines. President Muhammadu Buhari makes historic visit to Owerri, Imo State capital, as residents stay off the streets. Tells Southeast leaders that he wants to be remembered as the leader who stabilized the country, while Ohaneze Ndigbo wants all detained Igbos released. Court of Appeal orders stay of execution on the Rivers State government's plan to begin collection of value-added tax as Lagos and other states join the battle against federal government on who collects VAT. African Union and ECOWAS suspend Guinea following a coup that ousted 83-year-old Alpha Conde as mediation with coup plotters continues. And the United States is marking the 20th anniversary of 9/11 as President Joe Biden calls for unity among Americans. President Muhammadu Buhari, in a visit to the Imo State capital, Owerri, is reassuring Southeast leaders of security and plans to address the issues of alleged marginalization. Buhari's visit was greeted by apathy from residents due to the IPOB's sit-at-home order, but the president and his host, Governor Hope Uzodinma, went round to commission some projects. At a meeting with leaders of the Southeast geopolitical zone, President Buhari said Igbos are fundamental to Nigeria's growth and economy, and that there's no reason for the Igbos to contemplate leaving Nigeria, considering their grip on the economy. Buhari says he would like to be remembered as the president who stabilized Nigeria in the area of security, economic prosperity, and triumph over corruption. Let's take a listen.
Despite the sit-at-home order by the separatist group observed, Imo residents
infrastructure is what will enable the people to mind their own businesses. If there are no roads, if there is no security, what can people do? Absolutely nothing. I am very pleased that by some fabulous coincidence, my idea and that of your governor coincided. I'm very pleased with what I have seen, and I assure you that at the center, I will try to encourage Imo State within the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
And issues raised, particularly in my speech, and also that of the governor of Imo State, are universal issues that touch on equity, sense of justice, balance, and fairness. Those inevitable qualities without which peace is impossible. I keep saying that indeed those denied justice throughout history have had no interest in peace.
Well, joining me to look at the president's visit to the Southeast and the issues emanating from it is Professor Jideofor Adibe. He is a professor in the Department of Political Science and International Relations at the Nasarawa State University. And I also have with me Ali Muhammad Ali, who is the editor-in-chief of People's Daily newspaper, and he's also the deputy president of the Nigerian Guild of Editors. Good to have you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Yes, let's start with our assessment of President Buhari's visit to the Southeast. We can hear the president actually giving reassurance to that region, which has been crying of marginalization and then has been also plagued with insecurity like other parts of the country. What do you make of the assurances by the president? And then, of course, the Ohanaeze Ndigbo also calling for most persons who are detained based on these political agitations to be released.
Well, Ohanaeze has said what he should say, because as a socio-cultural group, it is expected to aggregate and protect the interest of the Igbos. So it has to call for that release. I also think it was right. It's probably late in coming, but I think it was right for the president to go, especially the symbolism of adorning the traditional Igbo regalia and the red
which
cap.
Which caused controversy on social media.
Which is good, because when he was campaigning for president, you know, it was in 2015, it was one of the ways they tried to reinvent him as a national figure, given the fact that in his 3 previous runs, he had been dogged by allegations of being clannish and the rest of them. So I think it was also good that he was able to go despite threats by IPOB. So what you should understand that is in any society like Igbo or any other big ethnic group, you have to have differences of opinion. Some people will stand for, some will be against. But it is important to make a distinction between the office of the president going to Imo State and Buhari as a private citizen going to Imo State. So the presidency, what symbolizes the presidency was what went to Imo State. And I think it was right that irrespective of your feelings, out of at least respect for that office, that people should be there.
Very interesting. So, Ali, we don't know what your thoughts are considering Buhari's stance that the Igbos are almost everywhere in the country. There's no reason why any Igbo man should consider leaving the country.
Yeah. Well, let me even extend that further, that Igbos are virtually everywhere on the planet. You know, there is this saying that any place the Igbos are not present is barren. That is it's a very popular thing, perception out there in public space. So it's long overdue. I think the first time he went to any Southeast state, apart from campaigning, and like the professor said, donning the Igbo cultural regalia itself, I think is symbolic. And also presenting the president who's very dear, his own cultural outfit, very dear. First time perhaps before the campaign, and after the campaign, he would don the regalia of any subnational group. So
just like we've never seen the president wearing a suit.
Exactly.
He did wear suit once.
during the campaigns in 2015, and since then.
Yeah, apart from photo shoots, you've not seen the president really, and you can precisely predict what he's going to adorn. It would appear that a specific cultural outfit he reserves for specific occasion. When he's flying abroad, you see that he will forget the flowing babariga, you put on the kaftan.
So this was a very strong message.
Precisely, very strong message.
I understand your problems, but give me time to go through it.
Yes.
But do you think that Southeast leaders should trust Buhari enough? Because he's in his 6th year if he hasn't been able to resolve all the crises plaguing the region, including allegations of marginalization in the past 6 years, why should they trust him in the next 2 years left, or even less than 2 years?
Certainly, he's not done much to earn the trust of people he's hurt, especially post-2015 election. And it's in the public domain, his own understanding of those who voted for him and those who did not vote for him, which has raised a lot of controversy. If you recall that he is not going to reward people who voted him 5%, and that pitched the nation, well, at least the Southeast, against his presidency. And he has not reached out enough to also assuage and then these feelings of being marginalized. But if you look at it, he has argued in the past that he's not done anything outside the Constitution, that he has represented the Southeasterners as required by the Constitution, namely that every state must be represented in the Federal Executive Council, and in matters of distribution of national wealth. You know, normally people look at the largesse that is accruable as a result of
coming to those
federal
positions.
power.
Very interesting.
Yes.
Now, when President Buhari says he's actually going to ensure that all major federal government projects in the Southeast are completed before he leaves, especially like the second Niger Bridge and all of that, and then you could see Femi Adesina also releasing some projects that the president is giving himself thumbs up, including the completion of the Zik Mausoleum that had been neglected by previous administration. What do you think the president is trying to say?
Let me just say that some of the things that the president has done, good things he's done for the region, are overshadowed by what people regard as politics of, spite. For example, there are certain strategic appointments you feel is deliberate that they overlooked. And this, I also believe that in years to come, maybe when the second Niger Bridge is completed and others, people may have a few things to say good about him. But what matters so much for people is not so much what he put in place on the ground. Appointments are essentially an elite game. A few people get appointments.
And it's the same elites that go to town to actually say that it's not doing much.
It's still important psychologically to feel you belong. I'm not saying it's not important, but it's easily forgotten. It is how you make people feel that is strategic. Babangida built the third mainland bridge, very strategic in Lagos. How are people in Southwest remembering him? They remember him for annulling the election.
Okay, as we try to round off this conversation, gentlemen, let's take a look at some of the critical things that we expect President Buhari to do in the remaining a year and about 10 months left now. What do you expect him to do in his re-engagement with the Southeast and other parts of the country?
I don't really expect something drastic. Buhari, he has his own worldview, and I think some of the paintings of him, pictures of him have been extremely anti-Igbo, and all this may be exaggerated. He hasn't done much, not just for the Southeast, but for the country in terms of managing diversity, the way Babangida or Obasanjo would have done.
Okay, and you, he just raised a very critical aspect, management of diversity of the country.
Yes, well, let's just say the Buhari's regime is effectively a lame duck, so he has very limited time. But in matters of managing the diversity, you can tell from his kitchen cabinet, people he consults, and his ability to strike and build friendships across the Niger. Of all Nigerians leaders, people say that he is the most cocooned, and he's not made, notwithstanding his military background, which should have expanded his world.
Yeah, after having served in various parts of the country.
But people hold that against him for failing to manage our diversity, and his, well, if you like, lack of political sophistication.
Right,
he says what he feels.
Very interesting. We just have to go on this short break. When we come back, we'll be talking about the tax war in Nigeria. Who should collect the country's VAT? Well, stay with us as we go on this short break. back. You're still watching This Week. The Court of Appeal in Abuja has ordered the Rivers and Lagos state governments to stay action on their bid to collect value-added tax pending the resolution of the legal dispute on the matter. A three-man panel of the appellate court ordered that the enforcement of the judgment of the Federal High Court, Port Harcourt, latched onto by the state governments, be put on hold. The court also suspended the operation of the law passed by the Rivers State House of Assembly and assented to by Governor Nyesom Wike for the collection of VAT by the state government. Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu also on Thursday assented to a law passed by the Lagos State House of Assembly to allow for VAT collection. Other states like Oyo say they are watching the situation and will take appropriate steps like Lagos and Rivers. The tax war between the FIRS and the states has put the federal government in a very tight position in the collection of VAT. Other states that have less commercial activities like Kogi and Katsina states are already kicking. They are asking the Rivers and Lagos state governors to act cautiously in the interest of national cohesion. Well, I still have with me here Professor Okendibe. Gideofo Ndibe, so to say. Your name just keep me obviously. And then Ali Muhammad Ali, who have been here with us discussing all these issues. And he's of the Nasarawa State University. And Ali Muhammad Ali is the editor-in-chief of People's Daily and deputy national president of the Guild of Nigerian Editors. Let's start with you, Prof. What do you think about this subtle restructuring that's ongoing by the states?
I think I'm happy about it because the agitators for restructuring, various strands of restructuring, this is fiscal federalism now we're talking about. It's good to try out in court and see what happens. But I think ultimately, if the Nigerian Governors Forum, I always believe that the Nigerian Governors Forum should be a place for resolving contentious issues because of the huge constituency of people they control. Virtually all members of the federal legislature are under the control of various governors. Yes. So if it becomes a ding-dong affair, and they can go to the Governors Forum, do trade-offs, and then send it to the National Assembly for rubber stamping. That's also what I believe with when the Southern governors took some measures. I expected maybe let this Northern Governors Forum also take some contentious issues, deal with them, and they go to the Nigerian Governors Forum.
So that will now make the Nigerian Governors Forum
become a place, clearing house. Do some kind of trade-off because they control, because we cannot really at this moment override legislature. You go there, do a trade-off, and then send to the National Assembly. But this is a very interesting development because it just shows that it is not just when we talk about restructuring that we must convene a national conference and say we are restructuring. The truth is that restructuring has been ongoing by certain constitutional amendments. And this court case will bring the issue of fiscal federalism at the front burner.
Well, Ali, it's been an interesting debate, actually. I mean, it's at the heart of this is, every state coming to the federal government at the end of every month, collecting monies. And people are saying that, look, if this tax war is properly debated, it could actually lead to a revolution in the states, and it will help states to sit up. Although we've seen some people actually saying that this debate by Rivers State governor, it's not just a Rivers State issue. It shouldn't just be, put aside to Rivers State. That it's a debate that should be expanded, and that's why you see other states embracing and asking to be joined in that suit. What do you make of the whole controversy?
Well, I think is defining, and I think it's good for our democracy. And like Prof said, well, it's about fiscal federalism, but it has also thrown up interesting scenarios. One of which is that people are asking questions now, because when you listen to the expert talk about input and output, they look at it, they dissect the issues, that some of the states now agitating for them to access VAT who may end up with the short end of the stick. Why? Because some of the states seen as actually leeches feeding fat on states that have the highest revenue as far as VAT might have shot themselves in the foot, because if we begin to tax certain products that are not taxed, like agricultural produce now, some of the states may end up not having the thing they thought they're going to have. And then if some of the states now wear VAT, for instance, people have made this argument, whether I don't know whether it's right, but tax, that's why we'll tell you that how do you even tax stateless organizations like telecom industries now, telecom providers.
Who have their headquarters in Lagos, but
yeah, they pay their taxes in Lagos. That means giving Lagos an undue advantage. What if Dangote pulls out and then returns home to Kano, his home state, and pay his taxes in Kano? What if Abdul Samad also now? What if, for instance now, some of the things now, one example that is often bandied about is how states like Kano that had banned the consumption of alcohol also is benefiting from alcohol consumption. Then you go to rivers. What are the breweries in rivers? Controlled by who? Who controls the breweries in rivers? Where do they pay their tax? For instance, if you look at the cement company, Lafarge, that bought Ashaka Cement, pays, everything is centralized. They pay their taxes in their headquarters, more often than not located in Lagos. If they withdraw, they say they want to go back, what they say, input and output. So there are a lot of controversies.
I mean, very interesting development. Prof, I just want to add, in addition to what you will say, is that why are we not seeing the Southeast reflecting so much in VAT? Like, for example, Aba, the commercial town of Aba in Abia said, I had expected that I would see that, but I'm not seeing that reflecting. What's going on?
Well, it's also a question how many companies pay taxes, how many individuals, apart from the big corporations. But to return to what you're saying, one of the ways people do this is you can now go and register your business in Kano and have operational offices everywhere and all else, so that the registration point can be a place you pay your tax. So that might be some of the issues that will now arise, because as you said, it's going to stir up the hornet's nest. We don't know really, you might think you might be the beneficiary.
Well, you know where the debate has started from.
And it's not even easy as you said for Dangote to relocate to Kano, for example. It is very, very interesting, because we will now be seeing some of the issues that it is very we like to think.
Yeah, but gentlemen, why do we have the FIRS now writing the National Assembly asking that this VAT should be on the exclusive list? Shouldn't we just allow this to just flow the way it is?
It will play out.
Because a lot of people are saying that the FIRS seems to have an ulterior motive. Let's go.
But, yeah, because I think inadvertently, since the VAT Act was assented to in 2007, it has not been amended in the Constitution to reflect the Constitution, just like the Petroleum Industry Act is not yet in the Constitution, but it has been assented to. It has come into law. Now, that's why perhaps the FIRS is asking the National Assembly, unless we have a constitutional amendment. Now, if you look at the VAT laws, when it was first enacted, I think...
Yeah, 1993.
1993
by Babangida administration.
No, Babangida or Abacha. It was Abacha, I think. Late 1993 or 94.
I think it's Abacha, Babangida.
Either way. It has not, inadvertently, it was not captured in the 1999 Constitution. But if you look at the tax law, the VAT law, and then the tax laws, some of the laws actually, who should collect what tax is reflected. That, look, company tax should be collected by federal government, while payee and enterprises tax should be collected by state. It's clearly defined.
And do the states actually have the capacity to collect this VAT tax if they are given the opportunity?
Why not?
Very quickly.
They will. They do. After all, in Lagos, there's a company allegedly owned by one of the politicians that does the collection of such things for the government.
Well, but so you have the bigger states actually having these powers. But if you go to some smaller states, they don't have the infrastructure to actually
even if you don't have it locally, you can outsource it. You can get a contractor to do that. But they will, because it's, if we use the example of Lagos State, it's actually a very lucrative thing. So you will not, you will not like expression of interest.
Certainly, bro.
All right, very interesting. We'll have to go on another short break, and when we return, our focus will be on the small West African country called Guinea-Conakry. We shall be looking at issues arising from the coup and if the intervention of AU and ECOWAS can return Alpha Conde to power. Stay with us. Welcome back to This Week, where we hold the best of conversations and analysis. I'm Somna Sambo, and I still have with me here in the studio Professor Jide Ofo-Adibe, who is of the Department of Political Science and International Relations, Nasarawa State University. Good to have you once more. And Ali Muhammad Ali, who is the editor-in-chief of the People's Daily newspaper here in the capital, Abuja, and he's also the Deputy National President of the Nigerian Guild of Editors. Good to have you. And we'll now move on straight to the next story we have. The African Union and the Economic Community of West African States have suspended Guinea's membership following the overthrow of the government of Alpha Condé by a military junta. Meanwhile, a delegation from ECOWAS on Friday met Guinea's ousted President Alpha Condé and members of the junta that overthrew him, hoping to steer the country back toward a civilian-led constitutional regime. The move comes after Guinean Special Forces, led by Lieutenant Colonel Mamadi Doumbouya, overthrew Condé, trying to consolidate on power by forming a transitional government and appointing regional military governors. Condé had come under increasing fire for perceived authoritarianism. The 83-year-old became the first democratically elected president in 2010 and was re-elected in 2015. But last year, he pushed through a new constitution that allowed him to run for a third term in October 2020. But international observers are beginning to question Guinea's suspension by the AU and ECOWAS, as they say such interventions are coming too late, since the continental and regional bodies did not make stronger moves when Alpha Condé was pushing through constitutional changes to give him a third term in office. Well, let me start with you, Ali. What do you make of this? People are beginning to say the ECOWAS and AU were almost too silent for comfort when Alpha Condé was messing around with the constitution, only for them to suspend Guinea now after he's been pushed aside by this military junta.
Yeah, well, you expect that they will make such posturings while when the man was fiddling with the constitution, extending his tenure, reviewing the constitution, which is reflective of most of some francophone countries and the tendency among African leaders to, as much as possible, to remain in power. We have them.
Some have described it as a civilian coup.
Constitutional coup, man. Constitutional coup.
Yes. Now, but you look at what's happening in Guinea and Mali and some francophone countries.
Niger,
yes. The case of Alpha Condé especially is sad. Why? Because unlike Anglophone countries, the military in these francophone countries, my own understanding is that they're more concerned, they think they have a stake. They're not there to protect regimes. They think they're also stakeholders. They'll be more radicalized than the military in Anglophone countries. And that's why, look at the reception given to the military junta that ousted Alpha Condé, who had overstayed his welcome. And clearly Alpha Condé was playing with fire. Why? Because he's not learned anything from his years he spent as opposition leader.
Yeah, and
for 40
surprised.
Years. We were surprised as a human rights. We expected at a point when he christened himself as the Mandela of Guinea. You would think that he would do everything by the book. He would respect the wishes of the people. But then in Guinea, under Alpha Condé, the resources of the state was cornered by a tiny, leeching and insensitive elite. The dividends of democracy have not been given to the average citizen of that country. So it was just a matter of time. But the extension, the review of the constitution to accommodate a third term was the icing of the cake. And then you said this was coming. You saw it coming. But in all this, you think that France also is the master puppeteer, because you cannot say France, being the former colonial master, is totally blameless. We've seen the handwork of France in Mali, in Niger,
including Chad too, of recent and all of that. So Prof, what's your assessment?
There's very interesting dimension to that. And yes. It will just remind you of Gowon and Garuba scenario.
Yeah.
The Doumbouya,
they call precisely.
He's a Malinke.
From the same place.
And in 2018, Condé invited him to come and head what the equivalent of Brigade of Guards.
Yes.
So to protect him, because special forces. Yes. So, and it's just exactly as Joe Garuba did.
Yeah.
He was the same man that was brought in. And by the way, he was among the 25 Guineans that the European Union wanted to sanction for human rights violations under Condé, which means he was playing the role. But then, you know, this thing with power, he said, and he had always admired Jerry Rawlings. So we don't know what comes next. He quotes Jerry Rawlings that when the elites hold people down, it becomes the duty of the military to liberate them. So we don't know the direction he's going to go. But the important thing now is there is democratic reversals across the globe. And especially in Africa, West Africa, we are now seeing increasing trend of, it's not just Francophone countries, but they have been in Sudan, they have been in other countries, you know. So we have to be very careful to believe that in the democratic space, yes, can contract and expand. There is globally a sort of reversal. And this is worsened by the fact that up to about, before Donald Trump came to power, there will be a forceful U.S. and international condemnation of these reversals. But increasingly these days, they tend to like lie low. The condemnation is very feeble. They threaten to cut it. And then, of course, there will be the timetable of 18 months to return. We saw that in Chad. We saw that in Mali. So this is going to be the playbook. So they are not really, African Union is like the ECOWAS and Africa and the international community. They don't have the balls anymore.
In all of this, people are beginning to ask, Prof, that ECOWAS sanctions and EU sanctions are just, you know, not so strong. What does Guinea stand to lose, for example, by being pushed
it's not
out
like
of ECOWAS?
Mali, that it is not landlocked like Mali. But there is an important thing I wanted to underline. With the resurgence of Russia in international affairs and China, so America and like France and the international community are more concerned about counter-terrorism and containing the expansionism of China. Remember, one of the arguments of China and Russia is that America's push for democracy is an imperialistic intervention in the internal affairs of African countries, and that they don't do such a thing, which means they use this as a way to
their sovereignty.
They use this as an argument that, oh no, we don't interfere in the internal affairs of Africa. So that becomes their way of competing for space in Africa. So for that reason, I think America, the Western Union, they are going easy on this pushing of democracy without.
Okay, Ali, let's talk about West Africans generally. Do you think that with the return of coups, a lot of people are beginning to send signal that they are impatient with democratic practice because democracy seems to be slow? People tend to abuse democracies, change constitution, just you know, playing and fiddling around with the constitution, and people are sending a signal that, look, we don't seem to be in tune with this democracy practice.
It's because those who have superintended since the return of democracy, especially with the collapse of, since we had what political scientists would say a unipolar world. In the past we had a bipolar world, but since America became the dominant superpower, now democracy, like Prof rightly pointed out, has been the clarion call, especially for America, to push for this, so that maybe it will have some kind of. But let me recall what Bill Clinton said nearly 20 years ago, or thereabout, when he came to Nigeria, that look, with democracy, change may come slow, but at least you're certain it will come. But with dictatorship, there is no guarantee there will be changes. Now, but you see, unfortunately and regrettably, African nation states that have been democratized, so to say, they have their leaders, those who have benefited from democracy dividends, they have not allowed democratic dividends to go down to those at the bottom of the social ladder. People have seen their aspiration, either for elective or being appointed into offices, have been contracted. We've become more clannish. Political patronage is given along certain primordial loyalties. With that, a lot of people are disenchanted with democracy because, like I said, we've not given the right democratic dividends. And that's why there is this feeling of despair.
Yeah,
and then you look
people calling on the military to intervene, even when
despair. And the political
process
space
is ongoing.
Yeah, but like we said, it's a long process. But let me recall what Professor Alumuzuri said long ago in Africa, the Triple Heritage. Give a specific example with Nigeria. He said, under democracy, Nigeria inches toward anarchy. And under military rule, it inches towards dictatorship. And look at what we have now, 21 years down the line. Nigeria is literally under anarchy, insecurity nationwide. Everybody wants to break out. Why? Because we've not risen to cement and manage the difficulties, the diversities that bring us together as a nation.
Okay.
Post-Civil War, if you look at how we manage post-Civil War, which is quite interesting, you must give thumbs up to General Gawan, how he managed Nigeria's post-independent, post-Civil War reconciliation, which saw the emergence of Southeasterner becoming number 2 in 1979, in just less than 10 years.
Very interesting indeed. Now, in all of this, the military government is already forming a transitional government and all of that. How soon do you think Guineans would want democratic practice to be returned? And do you think Domboya is here to stay, or he just wants to birth a new government?
He has not shown his hands. He hasn't said anything in that direction. But the template, the playbook is 18 months. That's what they did in Chad. That's what's happening in Mali. But obviously after 18 months, it's up to you what happens. So I don't really think, but don't forget, he was welcomed because people were already disenchanted. It's just like in Nigeria today. There's a lot of frustration. But one thing with democracy is that people never promise. In fact, there have been studies, and it's inconclusive on whether democracy is beneficial to development or not, or benevolent dictatorship is better. So it is an argument. The whole point is that they say, we can talk in democracy. It never promises you to have the best. But all those bottled up feelings we had under authoritarianism, under dictatorship, so we suddenly now we are unleashing them on the table. So there appears to be this momentary period of anarchy, what we call. And that if we keep faith and sustain it, we'll eventually outgrow that phase. That's what they call transition democracies.
Okay, very interesting. As we try to round off this conversation, gentlemen, do you think that the AU and ECOWAS sanctions will make any impact on Guinea, will force all sides to come to the table? Do you foresee an Alpha Conde being freed and then asked to also play a role in birthing a new process where he wouldn't be a part of?
Well, I don't see that happening, because look at what happened in Mali when it happened. The first coup, not last year, and the second one, just me. Like Professor said, it's a playbook, it's a pattern. Okay, we have a 18-month transitional period, then AU will make the usual noise, the ECOWAS will make the usual noise, and then they go to sleep. They are merely also interested in protecting some of the AU leaders and ECOWAS leaders, protecting their stools back home. But I don't see that happening in any way that it will compel the administration, the new administration, the military junta in Guinea, having everything, to have Alpha Conde back in the saddle. He is history now. It will be very difficult. It will take another, perhaps, intervention to get these people, the military junta, that is, to have a rethink. I don't see that happening.
Let's have
quickly, what I think is that because you need to delegitimize that government to justify your coup. So you cannot, in any circumstance, bring him in. Already he's done one thing. He released 80 political prisoners that Conde had, just like Babangida did when he came in. And so it is legitimacy scouting. He's scouting for legitimacy. So the better thing, like Buhari did when he came in to delegitimize Jonathan, that's what you are going to continue. In fact, he said, this is the end of the rule of one man. We are bringing it back to the people. So we expect a number of populist programs. He also told international community, because they have the largest reservoir of bauxite for making aluminium. So he said, don't worry, everything is under control. This is going to be for the people. So that populism is going to play for some time.
We can only wish Guineans well as international community battles to ensure that there's a return to peace, law and order in that West African country. Well, it's time for us to go on a short break. When we come back, we'll be talking about the Americans who are celebrating the 20th anniversary, marking the 20th anniversary of September 11. Stay with us. This Week, where we hold the best of conversations and analysis. I'm Sumner Sambo. The United States of America is marking the 20th anniversary of September 11, which is well known as 9/11. It's been 2 decades that terrorists attacked the Twin Towers in the United States of America, in which over 2,900 persons died in the attack, with more than 6,000 persons injured. 20 years on, the world is still facing global terrorism as terrorists continue to spread across all the continents. Across the U.S., the remembrance is ongoing for the survivors and those killed in the attack, with the U.S. promising to uproot terrorism globally. President Joe Biden is calling for unity among Americans, while Vice President Kamala Harris also says that unity is imperative in America. And I still have with me here Professor Jide Ofo Adibe, who is a professor in the Department of Political Science and International Relations at the Nasarawa State University. And then we also have Ali Muhammad Ali, who is the editor-in-chief of People's Daily newspaper here in the Nigerian capital, Abuja, and also the deputy national president of the Nigerian Guild of Editors. Gentlemen, still good to have you here with us as we go on this last lap. The U.S. is marking 9/11's 20th anniversary, and a lot of people are using this period to rethink U.S. global policy, considering what happened in Afghanistan recently, the fight against terrorism. This is all culminating at a time that people are beginning to say that the U.S. it seems to be withdrawing into its shell after experimenting with all sorts of global anti-terrorism policies. Some have worked and some haven't worked. Let's start with you, Professor. What's your assessment of 9/11 and the U.S. policies that took place, that were put in place immediately after that sad incident?
Well, it is a very major thing that has shaped U.S. foreign policy position since that 9/11. But as early as 1901, when one of our American presidents was assassinated by the anarchists, which was in that wave. The anarchists then were known as the terrorists, in what one writer, Rappaport, called that wave of terrorism. So exactly 100 years after U.S. swore to eradicate terrorism from the globe came 9/11. So which means if you follow the waves of terrorism theory, it's according to that theory, you have had the anarchist phase, you have the anti-colonial phase, and we're just in the religious phases, they said. And each phase is supposed to last for 40 years, according to that theory.
Interesting indeed.
That theory. So we are witnessing where, of course, it's a number of issues have joined. It's not just that it has to engage in counter-terrorism, and it also now has to think about its position in the global order of things. Some people are already saying this is the end of American century. And some writers are saying, no, we are not going to be worried about the decline of America. The issue is how will America respond. Then you put this thing with the triumph of micro-nationalism, the mainstream of right-wing populism, as typified by the former president, Donald Trump. So that thing says America first, which is saying more like American isolationism before the Second and First World War. So we are seeing it, but Joe Biden Joe Biden is it's too early, but it's trying to be as international as Barack Obama tried to be, because George Bush himself was isolationist in some ways, and Donald Trump took it to another level. These are what we mean when we say the democratic space can contract and it can expand, and there is global reversal in the fortunes of democracy.
Okay, Ali, let's talk about the president's call for unity. Kamala Harris is also asking for national unity because it's imperative at this time that Americans speak with one voice. 20 years on, what are the lessons and failures of the U.S. intervention in the fight against global terrorism?
Well, since 9/11, 20 years ago, 2 decades ago, if you look at, has the world been a better place? And then America's intervention in so many countries, leading to the war in the Middle East, leading to the liquidation of some regimes that at a point America helped to check certain tendencies that it found discomfited, especially after, if you recall, in 2003 when it went to war with Iraq against very flimsy reasons, which later
the issues of weapons of mass destruction are yet to be found.
But it was a decision taken as recently as a month ago. One of the generals that was involved said, look, long before America had made up its mind after 9/11 to go to war with 5 regime change, actually push for regime change. And that's why we're having crises in places like Syria, in the Middle East, and Maghreb countries. And then with the death of people America perceived as antagonists of its expansionist influence in Africa and in the Maghreb, especially African countries, the death of Gaddafi, leading to what we have now in the Sahel, in West Africa, is all fallout of 9/11. And even 9/11, there are conspiracy theorists. You know, the professor has all the theories to explain, but me purely as a reporter, my own understanding is that America beat more than it could chew. And that's why it's retreating now.
Yeah, but I mean, with all its allies also retreating.
Yes, and then the allies realized they've been hoodwinked into fighting unjust wars. And then trying to moralize about some of these issues at a point when the world has become a global community, a global village, and then America has to cut its losses. But is it good that America is retreating? America is a global superpower militarily and economically until China came galloping along to be a counterforce.
Yeah, we've had some people saying that while Americans were busy fighting all the wars, China was busy re-engaging.
The same way Hitler developed
its economy.
His army in the 1930s when there was the Great Depression. And virtually the whole of Europe after the First World War, which was purely actually a European war. But then in the 1930s, the Great Depression, it was the German economy that was booming. At the time, the global economy was in depression, was slowing down. And Hitler built his army. People never thought he was going to take on the world. Now, America now realized that, look, it's him origin. Look at the trillions of dollars spent in Afghanistan, only to withdraw. And then what did it gain? In Iraq, the war in Iraq, if you look at Trump, who is very uncouth, he says this as I understand it, it's all about oil. Now people are looking for alternative sources of energy. Renewable energy is the way to go now. Fossil fuel, people say all kinds of things. Now America has to cut its losses, but it's really not too good because they say every empire lasts 300 years. America is on the decline. No doubt about that, my understanding.
Okay, very interesting conversation indeed. Now let's talk about the conspiracy theories that battered immediately after this 9/11. There were all sorts of things. Some people said that, look, America just hoodwinked the world, that it was like an in-house job and all of that. Have those conspiracy theories been able to be pushed aside? Have we been able to arrive at the fact on who actually did this 9/11?
Well, conspiracy theories, even on who killed John F. Kennedy, they're still conspiracy theories. Once you have this official secret. In fact, the distrust of the government means that even when the government puts up a position, people will believe there's more to it.
Absolutely.
Look at the Diana in the UK. No, there must be more to it. So that goes everywhere. So it's not fruitful for us, in my own opinion, to speculate on conspiracy. There is something I want to talk about
very quickly
about the 9/11. I mean, what happened, the withdrawal in Afghanistan. When America was in Vietnam, they thought it was the issue of communism. It was nationalism. So in Afghanistan, you wouldn't know how many of them actually and truly believed in the Taliban ideology. Otherwise, there was no resistance.
Yeah, I mean, so that's why a lot of people said that.
They didn't put up any resistance.
The military was
you must have been spending money thinking, just like when they said initially that they expected on arriving at Iraq, people will be welcoming them as saviors from this thing, but it didn't happen. So that is one of the things we have to...
It's known as the white savior complex.
So it's one of the things that it is nationalism at play, and it's also coheres with the fact that withdrawal.
Very interesting. I must thank you, gentlemen. Professor Jide Ofo Adibe, a professor in the Department of Political Science and International Relations of the Nasarawa State University here speaking with us. We must thank you for joining us. And then we also have to thank you, Ali Muhammad Ali, who is the editor-in-chief of People's Daily newspaper here in the Nigerian capital, Abuja, and also the deputy national president of the Nigerian Guild of Editors. We must thank you for joining us to analyze all of these issues this week. And that's how it's been for this edition of This Week. For me and the entire team here in Abuja, Lagos, London, and New York, goodbye and thank you for watching. I'm Somna Sambo.